Good morning. Good morning, Tristan and Tracy and Laura.
Good morning.
How are you?
Good.
Good. Hey, Tristan, I'm a panelist,
Yeah.
so I can't. Yep, no problem. There we go. All right.
Jacqueline, I have a message that says you're in a practice session. Start the webinar.
Yeah,
Okay.
I will start it after.
Okay.
Okay, well, it is 7:01 here in Portland, Oregon. 8:01, I believe, in Montana. Good morning, everybody. It's great to have you here. We look like we have a pretty full group. As you may notice, Zach is not here today. Tracy Moseman from OPI is going to be co-facilitating with me. And in a moment, we'll do our usual roll call, and maybe you can say your role as well as your affiliation, because I don't think Tracy knows everybody in the group. And Tracy, if you just want to say a couple words about yourself.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Good morning, everyone. It is fun to get to sit in and listen to this conversation. I am Tracy Moseman. I have served as Chief Program Officer here at the agency for just a little over a year. I actually come from the Health Enhancement and Safety division within the agency. So this whole conversation around educator prep is fairly new to me. I was involved in some of the preliminary research conversations when chapter 57 and 58 were doing some of the research last winter. So I have kind of a high level overview of some of the discussions that you all have been having, but I'm really excited to sit in and listen, take notes, and if there's any questions or conversations that I can contribute to, I am happy to be part of that. So thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. Okay, so if you can say your name and your affiliation and what you do there, we'll start with Allison.
Good morning, Allison Harmon. I'm the Dean of the College of Education, Health and Human Development at Montana State University.
Thank you, Allison. Emily.
Good morning. My name is Emily Dean, and I am the Director of Advocacy for the Montana School Courts Association.
Okay, Gary.
Yes, good morning, everybody. My name is Gary Lucene, Bozeman School Trustee.
Alrighty. May I get this right? Kari.
Yes, you did. Kari Orndorff, Montana State University Health Enhancement.
All right. Kirk.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Kirk Miller, and I'm the Executive Director of School Administrators of Montana.
Wonderful. Laura.
Hi, I'm Laura Posner Brown, and I am a grade 5 through 8 librarian in Lewistown, Montana.
Fabulous. And Laura? Oh, was that Laura right there? Did I just say Laura?
Mhm.
Okay, sorry about that. Oop. Nishala, I'm looking at my list and wasn't listening. Nishala.
Good morning. My name is Nishala Silva. I'm the Assessment Accreditation and Data Coordinator at the College of Education at MSU Billings.
Okay, great. And McCall? Good morning.
Hi, good morning. My name is McCall Flynn. I'm the Executive Director at the Board of Public Ed. Thank you.
Thank you. Stevie.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Stevie Schmitz from Rocky Mount College, where I serve as the Director of Education.
Fabulous. All right, have I missed anybody?
I don't think so, but I've got Gail Stapleson and the attendees. I just am struggling to get them moved over.
Okay, are they able to hear us?
I believe so, yes. Maybe I can allow you to talk, Gail, and see if that works.
Okay.
I am not sure what's happening there.
Okay. Well, we'll keep going, and if there's anything you can do to address the technical issue, that's great. But we've got everybody here. Our agenda today is to briefly recap our last meeting. A few of you were not here. Check in on the idea of breaking the group down into subcommittees to help us get through some of the work. We want to discuss and finalize our recommendation around exploring year-long internships, and continue our discussion of lever topic 2, hopefully wrap that topic up. There were some additional suggested changes to the ARM language. Thank you, Emily, for sending those, and I want to share those with you, and we'll discuss them, plus any other topics any other changes that fall under this topic. And if we have time, begin discussion of our third lever topic. And I'm going to go over what each of those are today, just to remind us and give us a sense of where we're at. So that's our agenda. To recap what we did last time, and I could pull up the tracker, which has all of our changes, and all of you should have access to that. We added a little bit of language to incorporate SEL into the 501 subchapter. And I'll show this in a moment. We recommended changing some language regarding pre-service teacher payments as allowed by law in subchapter 312. And we looked at some draft language for a broad recommendation, again, to encourage the state to continue to examine how to increase access to paid residencies, on-site residencies for pre-service teachers. And we tabled a vote on this broad recommendation so that we could make some changes to it. So I want to make sure that we do that today. Just as a reminder before we get into our agenda, these are the high leverage topics that were identified in your initial task force meeting that this task force felt folks would want to discuss and potentially explore in order to make specific changes to the ARMs or to make broad recommendations around these issues. And I believe some of this came after looking at the focus group report that Education Northwest worked on with OPI to get feedback from a diverse group of stakeholders. So we've already talked about this broad first topic, pedagogy. Doesn't mean we can't talk about this topic again, but we had quite a bit of discussion about some of the issues in this area, balance between pedagogical and content knowledge, moving to more active learning. And all of these overlap, I should add. Today, hopefully we'll wrap up discussion of real world experiences, and in particular, the possibility of exploring and or encouraging year-long residencies, as well as hands-on experience for pre-service teachers and educators in diverse settings. Our next topic is the possibility of extending or increasing the amount of robust observation and mentorship that pre-service educators receive. How can the ARMs affect that, encourage that? Do we have some broad recommendations in that area? The fourth topic is continuous improvement and the desire for lifelong learning among educators, including accountability to outcomes. Our fifth topic is relationships, the importance of educators' ability to develop those with students, parents, and the community. And our sixth topic may be something we've already covered in topic one, but specifically technical skills and knowledge. It's been our method to work through these and to look at the language in the ARMs in chapter 58 to see if there are areas where we can make changes around these issues. That doesn't mean we won't. I'm hoping that I'm sure that we will have time, or we will make time at the end to look at all of the ARMs, all of the ARM language, and see if we've made all of the changes that we want to make. So this is just a way to kind of move through some of the bigger topics that you all identified. But we do want to also examine all of the language in chapter 58 and ensure that any changes that we want to recommend, we've discussed and voted on. So let me just pause for a moment. Any questions about this, what I've shared so far? And Tracy, or Tristan, if I miss somebody's hand going up, please let me know. So in our debrief, Zach and I discussed reintroducing the idea that we brought up once before of considering having all of you break up into some smaller groups to ensure that some of the more careful investigation of the language in chapter 58 happens, to make sure that changes we've recommended don't affect other areas of chapter 58, other subchapters, and to be sure that we're sort of aligning our work. Another opportunity might be to just break up the rest of the high leverage topics and have some groups kind of do some initial work so that when we discuss them, we have some ideas already on the table. It's just I think this group chose not to do that, and that's fine. But I just wanted to give us an opportunity to, now that we've gotten into the process a little bit, if folks feel that it might be useful to create one or two subcommittees that do some work in between meetings, or that take the lead on a particular topic or some aspect of the process, this would be a good time to make that recommendation and discuss it. So I'm just going to pause for a moment. If anybody has thoughts about how we might use small groups to get our work done and to be thorough, that would be awesome. Allison, I see you have your hand up.
Well, one thing I wanted to just bring up, because I'm aware that some national standards actually supersede the standards in our chapter 58. And so, it's not an area that I'm very familiar with. So we need to get some help from another expert on where that's the case. But I just wanted to make sure that everyone understands that is the case.
Thank you. Any other thoughts about using small groups to continue parts of the work?
I just would make a comment as well. I'm not sure about small groups, but I think what might help facilitate the process in a better way or in a faster way would be to utilize the expertise of those that are trained in the Office of Public Instruction to be able to craft language around recommendations that are being made here, rather than expecting that a committee member is going to come up with the right kind of language, because the depth of knowledge, so that, you know, if you change language and what impact it has on other 6 sections of administrative rule, really requires somebody who has a real deep knowledge base of what's currently in the rule and what the impact of a language change would have on other sections that are there. And so I just, you know, I would throw that out there, that there are people at the office who have very, very deep knowledge of what's currently in rule and what kind of language might, in fact, make more flexible and more convenient to meet those, the core values that were described by the committee, and use that approach as opposed to, you know, meeting weekly and throwing out the fact that we think that there's language that somebody on this committee or on this task force is going to be able to come up with and throw into the mix. Rather, let this committee have the discussions around the areas of flexibility and the areas that we think need to be changed, and then have somebody with the technical knowledge to actually make suggestion on this language might work to meet the needs of what the task force is recommending.
Thank you, Kirk. That makes eminent sense to me. I may check in with Cheryl Allen a little bit on this. What she did assure us is that, or what she did tell us at one point, is that rather than be concerned about the specifics of the wordsmithing of some of our language, some of our proposed changes, that the communications department at OPI and the legal department can review suggestions and make specific, can actually do the wordsmithing, send it back to the group, make sure it's what we intended, and then it can go for a vote, it can be moved forward. But I do think what you're saying makes a lot of sense as well. And maybe we can explore having some folks from the appropriate OPI office visit with us to help us with some of this. Let's see, who's that? Tristan, Stevie, sorry.
Thanks, Jacqueline. I think we have a lot of work ahead of us as well, and I'm concerned about how we're going to tackle that. So I just wanted to make that known, that I think our timeline is you know, starting to creep up on us. But in addition, I wanted to let you, and I already let Tristan know, I think there's 3 of us, Allison, myself, and Nishala, who will have to be stepping out or monitoring 2 meetings here at 9 o'clock. So to just be mindful of any votes that we need to take, because looks like we'll be short a quorum if in fact we have to step away.
Oh, okay. So you're saying in 45 minutes, 3 of you need to step away.
Yeah, I don't want to speak for those other 2, but I know I'm during the meeting, so I'll need to step away. And I think Allison and Nishala will be there as well.
Yeah.
I'll stay on this meeting, Stevie.
Okay, that'd be great.
Thank
And
you.
oh, sorry, our quorum is 12, is that it?
Correct.
Yes, okay. But do we even have 12 now, Tristan, that can vote?
Sorry, I'm working off of just my laptop, so I can't just see everything. We've got 10.
Okay. So I'm not sure of the process. If we don't have a quorum, maybe we can be ready to vote and then finalize those votes next time, but we can take an initial vote just to get a sense of whether the group feels they're ready on a particular issue. I'm not sure about that. That's not come up before, so. Anybody else have, somebody else has their hand up, I think. Emily, yes. See you.
I was just going to comment on the subgroup topic. I know one of the things we had discussed before was making sure that everyone had a chance to have more or less equitable access to information in each of these topics. And I we'd still stand by that and making sure that the whole group discusses this as one. And just after hearing some of the reflections from how it's been going in chapter 57, I think that the whole group is probably a better route to continue with. I do understand, obviously, there's a lot to get through with a full group, but I think it's important enough that everyone be involved.
Yep, I hear you. So maybe just we can be thinking if, as you did actually this time, as you come up with ideas for changes, to forward them in advance so that we can have them ready to go. And if there is an issue where one small group wants to do a little bit of research and then come back to the group with suggestions, that might be helpful. But I think we all agree that having everybody discuss together is very important. So, okay, anybody else? Allison.
Yeah, on that same topic, because I agree. But what you just said, Jacqueline, makes sense to me too, that if there's a small group that wants to make some progress on some language, and maybe this is an opportunity to bring in external experts that we don't have at OPI and that we don't have on this task force, that would be efficient.
Okay. We'll continue to explore ways to do that. That's fabulous. All right. I'm going to move us on to our next topic. So we talked about paid internships quite a bit, and we have come up with a broad recommendation regarding just the encouragement and requests that the state continue to support ways to explore year-long paid internships. And I'm going to come out of this right now and pull up my tracker that shows the specific language that we've been looking at. I'm going to give me a moment to make it a little bit bigger. But this was a topic that we discussed quite a bit. And, oops, sorry. Looks funny here. Okay. Let me make this a little bit larger. I can also ask Tristan, you might put the link if you get a chance in the chat so that folks can see themselves. We had a vote last time to add some language. This is 3.1.12, initial clinical partnerships and practice, to add some language that pre-service teachers are authorized to receive payment to the extent allowed by law. And this passed. This was seen as a way to open the door to more piloting, or maybe not piloting, but more exploring this option. And the group discussed many obstacles to making this a requirement. So the language that we left it with the last time we met, reads: the state should investigate how to increase access of educator prep students to paid on-site clinical residencies in diverse educational settings. Current EPP programs with existing pilot projects should collect data on implementation and effectiveness. This information should be shared across the state and lead to further investigation. This is a broad recommendation. It's not going in the ARM. This is what Cheryl advised us to prepare when we have issues that we think should be brought forward to the board and to the superintendent. And the vote was tabled last time because a number of you mentioned some things that they would like to add to this, or ways you wanted to amend this around mentoring, as I recall. So on the table now is discussion about how we might change this to make it something that we would want to vote on. It seemed that most folks, and forgive me if that's not true for all of you, and then you can speak up, most folks supported the idea of making some sort of broad recommendation like this. But now we need to make sure the language is what we want to include. So I'll open this up for suggestions. Can you all see it well enough, or do we have it in, were we able to get it in the chat, Tristan? I'm sorry, I know you're.
Yes, it's there.
Excellent, thank you. Gary has his hand up.
Yeah, good morning. So I've been thinking a lot about this topic over the last week, and kind of where my thought has evolved to is really wondering if we're getting ahead of ourselves on this. I'm certainly supportive of looking at year-long residency and having that paid and how that's financed. But I'm just curious if we're missing the point of really looking at what the current programs offer now. And are there things that we can adjust in that could benefit those pre-service teachers that may influence what ends up happening with some sort of residency program? So I just had this sense that it's we're jumping ahead of ourselves and maybe not analyzing the programs as they currently exist and really looking at what might be done within that structure to adjust it and to increase the time students, pre-service teachers have in the classroom. I think there's some other options that may be available for those students that could be included in this as well. So I just want to throw that out there for consideration to make sure that any recommendation we have, I think, should cover a review of what is being done now, and if any adjustments can be made, and that investigation could include at the end of that a year-long paid residency for pre-service teachers. So thank you.
Thank you, Gary. So I want to just rephrase to make sure I understand as well, and others, you're suggesting not voting on this, but are you suggesting crafting a different recommendation that captures what you just said?
Yeah, well, I'd like to, I'm not suggesting that in a way to where I feel it needs to be put in. I would like to throw that out to the group because I don't have a lot of experience in that world to really know what's going on and what needs to change. So that's what caused me to think about, if I have to make a decision on this, do I know enough about this topic to really make an informed decision about the best way to go? So that's my reason for just throwing it out to the group.
Okay, thank you. Nishala, you were next.
Thank you. Also, I think it's important that we include language about clinical educators in this broader recommendation. What are the variables involved with the clinical educators, such as the time commitment and the compensation, etc. So I agree that it would be good to wait and craft a broader recommendation to make sure that we do a brief feasibility study and then see what other factors that could come into the equation. So that's my thought. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Allison.
Thanks. I want to agree with Gary a little bit on this and suggest that we need some input from field placement offices at our universities to think about the feasibility of that and also what can be improved about the way we currently do things. This is related in some ways to the task force that OCHI has right now on teacher retention, or recruitment and retention, where we're looking at this advanced student teaching experience that could be a year long. It wouldn't have to be a year long, but could be a year long. And we've also talked about abilities for student teachers to get paid during that time. So there's some overlapping things happening. I just wanted people to be aware that there's a couple things happening at the same time, and we don't want to. We want to be in communication and not reinvent the wheel or do the same work twice, I guess.
Okay, very good. So, and Stevie, you have your hand up, but if folks want to hold on this, that's what we will do, given especially that I'm not sure we even have a quorum to vote. So Stevie, go ahead.
I apologize for having to ask you to plow back over ground that you spent a lot of time on last week. I had students and was unable to be here, but can you give me a sense of what the group thought about where the funding would come from? Is this a state funded? Is this district funded, student funded, or students to be compensated for additional time in student teaching?
I'll let others speak, but I do know that that's exactly why we wanted this to be broad and not get into trying to propose an unfunded mandate. And we talked a little bit about possibilities for funding, but we were definitely clear that that was an obstacle. McCall, maybe you were going to address this as well.
Yeah, so typically when there's change in administrative rules, what happens is the Board of Public Ed has to go to the next legislative session if there is a positive impact to, say, a school district or to an educator prep program in this instance. They would have to go to the legislature and ask for the funding. So it is an unfunded mandate until there's funding attached to it. And the legislature doesn't have to comply. They don't have to give us money. There's 5 years to implement any of these new administrative rules. So there would be time and a couple different opportunities to chat with legislators and, convince them of the funding. But it certainly is kind of an interesting way in which we have to ask for that.
Well, it is very complex, and of course has been piloted over the years in different ways. But I think back to the questions about, do we know enough? I think that was one piece of information that was going to be gathered, and I don't know if it has been. But speaking for Rocky Mount College, I can tell you we do a 15-week student teaching, and speaking in a larger sense for the folks at the Council of Deans that we're going to meet with here shortly, there's concern about placements currently. And I think, again, could be a compounding factor if we're going to ask for an opportunity to make these placements longer and take a regular classroom teacher on for additional work. So, perhaps that's another place where we could get some information for this group, is to touch base with the council and see what their thoughts are and bring those back as well.
Okay. It sounds like the group would like to hold on this. There's some need for additional input. Perhaps we need to, with OPI, talk about how we can gather that and then come back and discuss this issue again in a broader sense. So is anybody opposed to tabling this whole discussion for now and moving on? Does that sound like, is anybody, that's not a formal vote, but it sounds like we've kind of reached a dead end here, and not in a bad way, but we're ready to kind of move on and do some other things before we vote on something like this. Hi, Mary. Welcome.
Sorry I'm late. I forgot. I'm sorry.
That's all right. Gary, you have your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's worth doing this in a process so we make sure we get the right thing out in the end. So I think if taking the time we need is good. But one suggestion I have just for consideration is at least within the information we look at on this, if we could kind of bullet point the major elements we're identifying as pros or cons or barriers or areas that are needed for additional information. If we could just bullet point those topics in there so we know what the group is thinking about and looking at as far as what the breadth of this issue is.
Okay, that makes sense to me. And we can go through our notes and we can go through some of I think we looked at some programs and we had some discussion about other programs in other states and go back through those. And there was quite a bit of discussion and kind of pull together some of these issues to summarize. That would be helpful. Emily, did you have your hand up?
I did, yes. One other thing, I think that Gary's, I agree with Gary. One other thing that I think would be helpful within this is, making sure that we actually have good data to make some decisions off of. I know I was doing some research and, for example, I can't seem to find what our passing rate is for the praxis, statewide and differentiated between programs. And so I think some of that information would be really helpful to find out, where are we actually effective and where do we need to improve our effectiveness? And are there other routes to help candidates get better? And are all of them making it to the classroom? And if not, why? So I think some of that information would be more helpful to make us, just help us make more informed decisions here.
Absolutely. Okay. Tracy.
Hi, I'm just wondering, based on a couple of the comments and conversations in the chat and kind of listening to this discussion, if this would be a place where a subgroup would be interested that has been working with OCHI on the advanced student teaching opportunities to maybe do some research and kind of side by side that work and what's happening there with what this recommendation is around paid internships. Because I'm wondering if some of this is being addressed just procedurally with the work that's happening there and what actually needs to be changed in rule versus what is a change in practice. So I'm wondering if this is a place that a subgroup could really outline, these two opportunities and come back to the group with a recommendation.
That's a good suggestion. How do people feel about that? Stevie, is your hand up anew, or is this from before?
It is up anew in response to that recommendation. And again, I know that our work needs to be completed in a timely way, and we have quite a bit of work left to do. But this particular topic, I think, is going to be providing us with great opportunities, but great challenges. And I would hate for anyone not to be involved in the discussion and bring their thoughts forward as we formulate anything. Sometimes, as you know, we get a recommendation from a subgroup, an individual, and it just seems complete. And this one is, like I said, a great opportunity, but it's going to be fraught with great challenges as well. So I think that an opportunity for everybody to weigh in will be really important, as well as gathering the data that we talked about. We can certainly get the practice information, which is content-based. We can talk about what is working and what we want to have for the end product, I think. But in my opinion, it'd be better for the whole group to share and share different perspectives here.
Okay. Mary.
Yeah, hi.
Yes, hi.
Also, I just wanted to mention that if we teach pre-service teachers technology, how to be more efficient with grading and things like that, it allows more time to do the other things like the mentoring work and everything like that. And it will reduce the overwhelming factor. So assistive technology is not only for people with disabilities, but it's also to help the teachers be more efficient with grading, with their papers and all that kind of thing, so that they have more time and they're not as overwhelmed.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, so I think Tracy's suggestion, one way we could look at that while still being mindful of what Stevie is saying is if folks have some data that they feel that the group either needs to collect or that they can provide, that group, maybe we should mobilize those folks and be in communication with them. If you can put in the chat any way that you suggest that we can move forward on collecting some information, or if you're willing to help us to do that, please put that in the chat and we can reach out. We also need to sort of talk as a group and figure out the best way to do this. We won't create a subcommittee at this time, but anything that you would like to bring forward to help us go through this issue, which is a complex one, and make it a clear recommendation or a nuanced recommendation that's appropriate, that would be great. But it does not sound like we're going to vote on anything around this right now, which is just fine. Any comments about that before? Emily brought some proposed, Emily and maybe somebody else. I don't mean to say you did it yourself, Emily, but has some suggested changes that it would be nice to look at before some folks have to leave. So any comments on moving forward on this? And I don't want to move on without giving everybody a chance to say final words about this. And that is Gary.
Yeah, thank you. I think the organization of this and how this task force is, I don't know if instructed is the right word, but is information is brought to the task force to make decisions. I think looking at if a subcommittee, if there's a group that wants to get together to gather specific information on something and bring back to the group, I think that could be beneficial. I think just having a process that facilitates information, good information from the different areas would be real helpful. And I'm not exactly sure how that would be structured. So there may be work in between these weekly committee meetings, but at least we come back into the meeting with some additional information from a group on a specific topic that the entire group can discuss. So I agree, having an entire group really dig into this and look at it is very good, but I question whether or not the entire group will be able to gather the necessary information on these important topics that we need to really discuss in depth at each weekly meeting. So just a suggestion.
I hear you, Gary. So my suggestion, and then if someone feels differently, please speak up, is to put in the chat things that either you're willing to do or that you know you can bring forward, and you will, in a sense, be the subcommittee that we talk to by email. And if we need to create a structure for that, we will. But at least right now, it'd be good to know who has some information that they would like to bring forward. And I agree, also figuring out what other information we need to look at is important. So like I see Stevie has suggested what the Council of Deans can provide that may be relevant. Anyone else who has that, please do the same. And in a sense, you'll be our sort of, for this week anyway, a group that we reach out to. But we won't be making any decisions, of course. Okay. I'm going to ask Emily to speak to some changes that she sent us, some suggested changes to language. And I have them here in blue, I believe, but I just wanted to give you an opportunity to introduce them, Emily.
Great. Yeah, thank you. So these are, it's the same exact suggestion for 1058-312 and 1058-606. And it's adding a new B, not deleting anything, but just moving the rest down that says, must allow a candidate to serve in any district of the candidate's choice that is willing to partner in providing a clinical practice experience. One thing that I know a lot of folks have been working on and that's been of particular interest within MTSBA and for our members is being as effective as possible in recruiting teachers and retaining teachers. And we know that you're more likely to stay in a district if you're teaching in your home district, and also supporting grow your own programs that are trying to be set up in lots of different places, and including being supported by legislation this last year. So including that in these two sections would ensure that candidates could be placed in a district where they have a connection or a mentor or something else. We also talked in our office about asking the task force to consider unifying the initial basic and advanced program sections of Chapter 58. There's a lot of the sections that are almost exactly the same. And if not combining both of them at least combining 606 and 312. As a lot of you know, especially when you're dealing with the rules and or code, more language, more is not necessarily better. And so when we're just repeating language under a different subtitle, a lot of the time it can be a lot cleaner and folks can find everything in one place if you have it all in one place. And that's not necessarily the case right now.
Okay, thank you for putting those suggestions forward. I've put these in blue in the tracker so that you can see the two sections and also the broad recommendation to at least look into consolidating some of the language here. And I would love to give everybody a moment to look at that and then hear some comments. Some discussion. Oh, sorry.
I'll just jump in.
Kirk, yeah.
Sorry. I support the language that has been recommended. The research around that is, paying attention to what's going on in educator prep programs and the placement of the individuals in their in the school district that is close to where the candidate wants to be. And so I think there's very valid in the language that's been suggested here for 312.
Okay. And for the other one, 506, is it? Yeah. Okay. Allison.
I'm a little confused because I think that the initial and advanced are set up because that mirrors the CAPE standards, and there are different standards, and we have new advanced standards that need to be incorporated into our rules. And so, Emily, I don't know if that is in conflict with what you're suggesting, but I think we better pay attention to, for the benefit of EPPs and what we're trying to do in maintaining accreditation, of making sure that we're being consistent with CAPE.
Okay, McCall, you have your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. I just have a quick question on the placement, and this is probably just, I just don't know enough about how candidates are placed, but are there times when candidates might want to stay in their hometown, the EPP won't allow them to go back there, or it's just not a good fit? I guess I'm just wondering if these things happen, and that's why we're having this language. So a little more clarification would be helpful.
Okay, Stevie, you put your hand up.
Yes, there is from time to time requests. I mean, there's often requests for folks to go back to their hometown and student teach. Some of the complications that come with that are having adequate supervision in that particular district and making sure we have a good fit between the mentor and the student teacher. I think each district has tried to, each EPP has tried to range that as best they can for the students. Obviously, there's some obvious benefits for them to go back to their hometown and perhaps have, live with parents, have less expenses than they would in their college situation. But they're also, it's fraught with some issues if we send them back to the high school that they have recently graduated from. And most of the EPPs are not as excited about doing that as doing a placement in an area where we can have our faculty supervise them. The cost of having the mentors, again, and as Allison mentioned in the text, is sometimes prohibitive. And that does incur an additional cost for students as we send them out of area. So again, tons of complications in all the situation, benefits and obstacles both. As with all of this discussion, I'm sure that there's a reason that the language is the way it is. As Allison mentioned, it's really important, the CAPE situation, keeping initial and advanced programs separately. I understand the redundancy that comes with that, but some of the EPPs have only initial ones and some have both initial and advanced, and we're seeing CAPE change the advanced ones, as Allison mentioned. So it's important that we stay in tune with what's happening there as we're aligned by the state with the national standards in that way. So, you know, I think these are great ideas for the Grow Your Own. Of course, we want people who have attachment to a home base and maybe return there to teach. But for the EPPs, it can be really fraught with difficulties. Yesterday, I had a request to student teach in either New Zealand or Hawaii. Great idea, but really difficult sometimes to arrange and have the same quality experience that we can continue their graduate education with.
Thank you, Stevie. Allison, and then Mary.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with what Stevie just said. I mean, where students get placed is, you know, this is a real delicate dance with partnerships that are you know, fragile sometimes, and we need to be able to place students where we can supervise them. We're not always able to place them where they want to go, and sometimes that's in conflict with where another EPP needs to place their students. And so it's a real collaborative and cooperative process. We extend courtesies whenever we can, but I would be very uncomfortable seeing this language in rule.
Okay, Mary.
Can we use cameras and then have virtual mentors? Because I mean, it's all rural, and of course we're not going to have mentors everywhere.
We've definitely used technology to do supervision, Mary. Thanks.
Emily. Oh, good. I was going to ask you if you wanted to add any suggestions or respond.
Yeah. So first on the advanced and initial and basic, we're not suggesting getting rid of initial or advanced, but instead having them in one place so it's easier to find. I know one thing that we are hearing a lot of, and I mean, we've all read about it in the press in the last couple months too, is how difficult if you're, you know, an average person that is wanting to move to Montana, or, you know, trying to figure out what you need to do to become a teacher. It is not just straightforward and I can read one thing and know what I need to do. And so I think having things in one place will be more helpful. We do this all the time when we amend code during the legislative session. Instead of having things in a million different places, we try to leave it in one place and then refer back to it, that specific piece of MCA whenever we're working on bills. I would say, I think that we need to have the end in mind, and the point is to get teachers into classrooms where they will thrive and where they will stay in the profession. And we know that that happens and is most likely when they are in a district or in an area that they truly want to live in and be in. And so I think that while I am, you know, sympathetic to the difficulty, I think in you know, those partnerships, I think that spending time and making sure that we get it right is really important, because, you know, there's no point in a teacher going through an entire EPP and then not staying in the classroom because they're not happy or not fulfilled or not in the place that they want to be. And we also know that so many of these districts, particularly in our rural areas, are continuing to, you know, struggle to find candidates. And so I think that, you know, it's incumbent upon us to make sure that we are removing every barrier that currently exists from getting them placed in the locations that they want to be.
Okay, Mary, you put up your hand.
Yeah, I just wondered, I kind of have an interest, but I'm aging out, but I'm sure other people have an interest. That I have an occupational therapy degree, I have an engineering degree, and I'm an assistive technology professional. I'd like to work in the schools and be a teacher or maybe an assistive technologist. And I don't know, I've been looking at the OPI and trying to find my way, how I proceed to do that. And it's not real clear. I guess there's probably some outline for a non-traditional person to get into the schools, but it's not real clear how, at least from my perspective, how I do that. I have worked locally at Evergreen, but I was on disability, have orthopedic problems, but I'm aged out of disability, so now I can teach. But anyways, I just think that if it would be a little bit more clear where people look, because I didn't even know about OPI when I came to Montana. Then I found out about it after I had worked at Evergreen, and
Okay.
you know.
Okay. Stevie.
One last comment before I step across to my other meeting as well. I want us to be really cautious about this discussion, in that I don't believe that where someone's student teaches is a direct impact on their staying in the field. We have to be careful when we're talking about the extreme teacher shortage we have here, that we're continuing to provide quality teachers, not just quantity of teachers. They can student teach where they can be supervised by their EPP and choose to work wherever they choose to work, and develop a relationship with that district, which they probably already have from having lived there. But this is the capstone experience for educational preparation. And we've talked about extending it and doing all sorts of things. Let's not abbreviate or deviate from the work of the EPPs in this final step, because if we're placing student teachers where they want to be instead of where we can support them, I think we will create as many problems as we perhaps solve.
Okay. Thanks to both of you, all of you. Does anybody else want to speak to the recommendations that are in blue? The second one is also in the advanced section of the ARM. Allison.
Yeah, maybe just one more comment about the rural placements is that we work extremely hard to place candidates in rural places, and that's usually not a problem at all. If that's where they want to go, we will make that happen. So that's not where the obstacles are. The obstacles are in places where there's too much overlap of need for clinical placements. It's rural places we would do in a heartbeat.
Thank you for that. Just going to give a little more wait time to see if there's additional responses to these proposed changes. Okay. My suggestion, but I'm open, is it doesn't sound like if we voted now, we would have a quorum, or that all of the issues around this have been discussed enough to come up with a likely change that we approve. So I suggest we move on and potentially rework this suggestion if possible, or discuss it further at another time, unless somebody else has, if somebody has a comment now that they want to make to refine this or to explore it in another way, this would be the time to speak up. Okay. Oh, somebody has their hand up. Mary, please.
Yeah, I just think that the non-traditional person might be, because they're already located in the rural area, it might be better if we address those people instead of trying to import somebody that doesn't want to go, like who wants to go to East Montana? I mean, I don't want to go to East Montana. I'm in Kalispell, but so people that are already there that are established, maybe if we could import those, that may be a better solution.
Certainly, programs intended to do that. Okay. Well, it's important to also decide what we're not prepared to vote on or approve. I think that's very important. I want to acknowledge that what I'm hearing, Tracy, tell me if you agree, is a need to explore how we can bring experts and more answers to some of the questions that might be underlying suggested changes. We should regroup and talk about ways we can ensure that that happens so that we can resolve some of the issues that have been discussed.
I agree. It almost feels like we just need to take these as single topics. I know time is of the essence, but structure a meeting in such a way that we have a 90-minute block of time where we're looking at the research that folks are bringing forward and then being able to have discussions about it. And I know some of that research happened in a previous phase, but these participants were not all part of that. And so I think that that's really important, Jacqueline.
Yep. Okay. So this broad topic is connections between classroom and real world experiences. The ARM sections that we, hold on, let me make this a little bit bigger, that we included in the crosswalk we've talked about in other, regarding other issues. I want to open up the floor to see if there are other proposed ways to strengthen classroom and real world experience, other issues that the task force members have been thinking about that relate to this broad topic. Some of which we've already discussed, but if there are others that you want to put on the table, this is a good time to bring them up, and then we can discuss them now and or move on to another topic as well. Mary.
Yeah, I think makerspace with the library, maybe, using the library to make a makerspace that's appropriate for the community is really connecting to real world experience.
Great suggestion. Okay. I think I will try to see if we can move to lever topic 3, acknowledging that we have some additional work to do around issues that have already been raised and related to topic 2. Topic 3 that was identified in the initial meeting had to do with more robust observations and mentorship. And I believe the impulse around this topic was how to extend the time. Are there ways to extend the time, and are there suggestions that we want to make either in ARM or broader in writing as broad issues or recommendations that we would like to discuss now? So I open the floor on this topic. Okay. I was not present at the initial meeting when this topic came up. Does the silence mean that there isn't anything that we need to discuss around this, or that folks need a little bit of time to look at the relevant ARM sections and think about how it's reflected in the requirements and the rules? Can anybody address that, Laura?
I think most of us are just being quiet because this ties in so strongly with what we were just talking about. And so we don't have anything to add to it other than like, okay, we've already talked about it costs more money. There's a shortage of people, how do we do a year long or what all that looks like. So I think we're just tying in so strongly with what our extensive discussion was just on, that's where we have nothing to add at this point other than we need more information.
Yeah, this does seem to me to be about other ways and avenues for increasing the kind of clinical experience that folks have. Tristan, I see you've put in the chat. Is this the lever topic 3 tracker?
Yeah, I just thought I'd put it in there for in case anyone wanted to go look at the arms in there.
Okay. Okay, well, I think that Laura, your explanation makes a lot of sense to me. So it might be good for us to kind of, we're not done yet, look at the next topic and have some initial discussion. I don't have a slide for it, but the 4th lever topic that was identified is continuous improvement and the desire for lifelong learning. Ways to support the importance of this and the value of this, including accountability to outcomes. I would love to open the floor to discussion of this topic. And if we have a tracker for that, Tristan, maybe we could pull it up. I think that you created them for everything.
I think I did. Give me one moment. Try to find it here.
There's also a crosswalk that identifies those if anybody has that available that they want to glance at. I know that in conducting focus groups to support OPI in this work, a number of different stakeholder groups brought up the importance of inculcating or supporting a focus on continuous improvement and lifelong learning among educators, pre-service educators. The importance of this, the need to see more of it at times, the desire to ensure that this is something that everyone who enters the Montana classrooms brings to their work and ensures that they're adaptable. And particularly after the year we've had, seem to be a real value placed on this kind of an approach to one's work.
All right, Jacqueline, so I shared it with you, so you should be able to edit it in Google, and then I just pasted the link as well.
Okay. Okay, does anybody have any initial thoughts about this topic that they would like to share?
Jacqueline, are you talking about number 4?
This is topic number 4, yes.
Okay, so I'll just say that this continuous improvement is absolutely part of EPP accreditation and also program assessment on campuses. And so it's pretty built into what we're already doing.
Okay. That's awesome. Mary, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I feel that OPI has some excellent classes that, you know, if we can just use that and encourage that, that they have some excellent classes, like 1D to 3D science, the Google Classroom, advanced Google Classroom, you know, and then also LMS, like Canvas. There's a LORRIE, LORRIE program that Australia uses. I network a lot, so I know a lot of different programs, but OPI is going in the right direction, I think.
Okay. You know, oh, Emily, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just, I don't have any specific language to offer, but I would say that I think that this is a really important part, and maybe a little bit of a gap in the ARM right now, that it might be helpful to just more thoroughly flesh out as a, you know, entry level standard.
Okay. How do folks feel about that? One thing that we can do is spend a little time looking at the language right now, opening up the tracker and seeing where this can be further emphasized in the rules.
So this is Laura. I guess I'm a little puzzled by this one. I guess I'm wanting some clarification. Continuous improvement and desire for lifelong learning and accountability to outcomes. So when I got my ed degree, I finished 12 years ago at Carroll. Just like Allison was saying at MSU, this was emphasized in our program, that these are the valuable traits of a successful teacher. And looking at this from now over a decade of being in K-12 is the concept of burnout, as well as the concept of teachers not actually being treated like professionals. And I think our EPP people can also talk to this, which is what we're finding is, even if you do seek to be a lifelong learner, when you are in education and further in, if you hit burnout, as happened with many teachers over the past 2 school years, there's no room left in your mental cup for lifelong learning in those time frames. And in addition to that, we have people who do become teachers, a lot of them, because they like having their summers off, they like their Christmas, they like their long weekends. And so if professional teaching were treated as a profession, financially treated as such, given the social respect that a true profession should receive, there would be more buy-in to this. But I have a really hard time seeing how this ties in actually with the ARM, and how you can require something of people who've been in college for 4 or 5 years and then mandating that. I have a real disconnect with this, and I have a hard time understanding how they tie together and how our EPPs can do more than they're already doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Emily.
Oh, that was from before. Sorry.
Oh, okay, no problem. Carrie.
I'm sorry, who?
Kari.
Thank you.
I started off better.
Just, I'm loving all of this discussion, but my question is, should we have the teacher placement programs in on this? Like, they're the ones at the I don't know, at the core level. Like, they're already dealing with all of this. Like, I know our placement program is amazing and has worked really hard to get what we're doing, and they do a lot of this stuff. But like, I don't know if we have the appropriate people in for this particular conversation, because it's just everyone's opinions and ideas, but we probably need to pull in the actual like directors of the placement programs, because the EPP programs, or the EPPs, like, they're doing a lot of this work and they know a lot of these answers. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you. Nope. Tracy, I'm going to put you on the spot the way I would with Zach. Is it possible to bring in other folks to meet with the group or to expand the composition of the task force at this time? Do you know?
I think that's a procedural question that we'll need to circle back with Cheryl on, Jacqueline, because I haven't been part of this process. And I know that there was some method that I don't know about that was used. My understanding is there's kind of these two different layers, an inner layer and then an outer layer that's to be kind of reviewing and putting a second set of eyes on things that come from recommendations. That being said, I can't imagine that we would ever want to not bring information forward to the group to be able to make informed decisions. I'm just not exactly sure what the process is, but we can visit with Cheryl and see how she'd like to handle that.
Okay, that's fabulous. That will work. We have 15 minutes left. One thing we could do is surface other issues that the task force knows it wants to talk about, meaning all of you, just almost a list. And then I feel as if the level of questions about how we proceed procedurally has gotten to a point where I don't think we're going to, we need to do that before we move forward on any kind of voting or any kind of crafting of recommendations. But we do have another, let's say, 5 minutes. If you all agree, there are some of you who have probably come here with specific issues that are related to these lever topics where you know you would like to see some changes and you would like to have them discussed in addition to what we've already talked about. And I'm just thinking in 5 minutes, that would be a good use of our time. And then we can regroup a little bit and talk about how to proceed behind the scenes and share with you next time. Is there anyone who would like to speak to an issue that they want to make sure we get to that relates to any of these topics that we haven't yet covered? And it's specifically something that you feel is related to the ARM or is a general recommendation that you would like the task force to entertain. Somebody else has their hand up. Who is that? Kari. And
Nope, I just forgot to put my hand down.
okay, no, I think it's Mary. Mary, you have your hand up as well, I think.
Well, I'm again like Eagleman, the
Jay.
Ojibwe. What's his name?
Jay.
Starts with
Yeah,
Jay.
Jay.
Yeah, Jay. Right. The responsive to the community. I also ask, are we teaching the students for the community that they're in, or are we teaching the students for the real world? Or, you know, and then we also have citizenship, you know, like not only, I mean, global citizenship. So, I mean, that's pretty important right now since the whole world might go down the drain because of climate change, you know? So.
Yeah. Yep. Right. Yep. I think that gets right to pedagogy. So that's an important issue. Okay. Well, this is all recorded. McCall, you have your hand up.
Thanks, Jacqueline. I'm going to take off my Board of Public Ed hat for a minute and put on my Macy hat, which is the Advisory Council on Indian Education. Yesterday they met, and I don't see anyone on here from that. And there were some discussions around, you know, including in our educator prep programs, more emphasis on teaching Indian Ed for All practices for our pre-service educators, and really putting an emphasis on how to incorporate you know, different variables of Indian Ed for All and some of those teaching practices. Again, I wish somebody was here that was on that call yesterday, but I know that that's something that they want to see be discussed in this chapter, and potentially try to find some different ways to include stronger language in the ARMs.
Thank you. Fabulous. Mary. Is that you? Is that your hand up? Yep. Mary, Mary, is your hand up anew, or is it just you didn't lower it from before?
I was on mute. I'm sorry. I just talked to Jim Warney, Jimmy, I think he calls himself, from Oyati Circle, South Dakota. He has a disability center. And he said that when you teach Indian education, you have to relate to the medicine wheel. So like I'm doing sensory processing disorder, and now I'm doing it on the medicine wheel. So like where you have emotional regulation, intellectual stimulation, exercise, and community. So that's, my 4 parts of the medicine wheel. So I'm redoing the class for a Native American class. So yeah, that's the kind of thing you got to do.
Okay, thank you. Any other, this is all recorded, any other topics that you would like, anyone would like the task force to hold space to discuss? And this can change, but if you're sitting on something that is important to be discussed by the task force, it would be great to just gather that information now as we think about how to structure the rest of our meetings. We certainly have some thorny, complicated ones already to talk about, so. Mary.
Yeah, I also would like to bring in a book called Inclusive 365, giving strategies, 365 different strategies. It has social, emotional, learning, all the different aspects, and little sections for each, and what you can do to improve each strategy. It's on Amazon, and there's a video. It kind of looks like, they're giving away, it's a Christmas video, and they're giving away things for prizes and stuff. But if you bear through that video, you'll understand that, it has all the different sections that we're talking about right here, and strategies of what to do, and different technologies, different low tech, all the way from low tech to high tech, whatever. But just addressing it to the teacher.
Okay, thank you. All right, folks. I think that since we have 10 minutes left, and we've, in a sense, talked about or touched on or given opportunity to talk about all of the high lever topics, I'm sure we'll discover other issues that we're going to debate and make recommendations around, but we have a number of them, and we have some procedural questions to resolve. One question that I have, Tristan, I'm assuming you're able to save the chat. Oh, I can too. So, okay, because some of you had some specific ideas about research or data that you would bring to bear. I just saved it myself. So
saved automatically for me too.
Okay, very good. So I think this was actually a good meeting. There were a lot of things that we needed to decide whether we were able to decide on, and we have decided we're not. So, but we've surfaced them, and I think that's fabulous. And we will get back to folks who wrote to us in a timely manner, and ideally before we meet next time, so that we have a little bit of work in front of you to look at. And if it can be in advance of our next meeting, we will do that. And we'll also be consulting with Cheryl Allen and others at OPI to expand the information that you have access to for these discussions. So unless anybody has a comment or question that they want to make, I would say we're finished for today, and we can give you back a little bit of time. Okay. I think we're done then. Thank you all very much for your time this morning. And
Tracy,
for
did
your
you have a
service.
question?
No, I did
Oh,
not.
Okay, thanks everybody. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.